Let me tell you about something that's been quietly unfolding in the background while most people are focused on other things. It's the kind of story that, once you see it clearly, you can't unsee. Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, recently went on camera and made a striking accusation. He claimed that American intelligence has been circulating plans for a ground invasion of Iran. Actual boots on the ground, Marines landing on Iranian soil. Now, on its own, that sounds like standard political theater. Iran's leadership makes bold statements all the time. You'd be forgiven for brushing it off, but here's the thing that made me stop scrolling. Around the same time, the USS Tripoli quietly entered the Persian Gulf. And if you know anything about naval vessels, that name means something. The Tripoli isn't a destroyer or a supply ship. It's an amphibious assault ship, the kind specifically engineered to deploy thousands of Marines onto contested coastlines. It carries landing craft, helicopters, armored vehicles, and everything else you'd need to put a fighting force ashore. It was carrying roughly 2,500 combat-ready troops. So you have Iran publicly accusing the US of planning a ground invasion, and at that exact moment, a ship literally designed for ground invasions is sitting off their coast. That is either the most unfortunate coincidence in military history, or it means something. To understand why this matters, you have to go back a few weeks. This conflict didn't explode overnight. It built slowly, the way these things always do. Proxy militia attacks on American bases in Iraq, drones harassing shipping lanes in the Gulf, rockets fired into Israel from Lebanon. Familiar chaos, nothing that screamed, "This is the beginning of something major." Then it escalated fast. Israel moved hard against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Iran activated proxy networks across the region. American forces were pulled deeper to protect allies and assets. And before anyone had clearly decided to start a war, there was one happening. The US response was swift and overwhelming. Operation Epic Fury. And that name turned out to be accurate. American air power systematically dismantled Iranian military infrastructure. Missile factories, naval installations, command centers, weapons production facilities, thousands of targets across weeks of strikes. From a purely tactical standpoint, it was one of the most effective air campaigns in modern history. Iran lost an estimated 2/3 of its military production capacity. The US didn't lose a single aircraft. By every traditional measure of military success, America was winning. Except Iran didn't act like it was losing. Here's the uncomfortable truth that I don't think Washington fully anticipated. Destroying things doesn't end wars. You can take out every missile factory in a country and still not force its government to surrender. History is full of examples. Germany in 1944, North Vietnam in the 1960s and 70s, Serbia in 1999. Air power is devastating. It is not, by itself, decisive. Iran's leadership appears to understand this very well. Their strategy, as best as analysts can read it, isn't to win militarily. It's to survive long enough for American political will to erode. They've watched Iraq. They've watched Afghanistan. They know that American democracies struggle with open-ended conflicts that don't produce clean victories. The plan seems to be absorb the punishment, keep the proxy networks active, make the cost high enough that Congress and the public eventually ask why we're still doing this. After the air campaign failed to bring Iran to the table, they actually rejected a 15-point peace proposal and escalated by striking a major U.S. airbase in Saudi Arabia, wounding American soldiers. Something appears to have shifted in the strategic thinking coming out of Washington. The USS Tripoli's deployment, quiet and unannounced, followed shortly after. What strikes me most about this isn't the ship, it's how it was deployed. No press conference, no presidential statement, no congressional briefing that anyone's reported on publicly. Just a combat-loaded amphibious assault vessel steaming into the Gulf while official spokespeople called it routine deployment and defensive positioning. When the military calls something with 2,500 Marines and a full amphibious assault capability routine, but that word is doing a lot of heavy lifting. The silence could mean several things. It could be deliberate ambiguity, keeping Iran guessing, using the presence of the ship as leverage in back-channel negotiations without committing to anything publicly. It could be genuine operational security ahead of a planned action, or it could simply be that decisions of enormous consequence are increasingly made in spaces the public doesn't have access to until after the fact. None of those explanations are particularly reassuring. If you try to map out where this goes, there are really three broad paths. The first is that this is sophisticated pressure. The Marines stay on the ship. Iran, staring at an amphibious assault force within striking distance of its coastline, decides the calculus has changed and returns to negotiations with more realistic expectations. Tripoli eventually sails home. Nobody fires a shot. The threat itself was the point. The second is limited, targeted operations. Not a full invasion, but something more surgical. Seizing control of Karg Island to choke Iran's oil exports, securing specific facilities, raids on high-value targets, boots on the ground in a narrow, defined sense, painful enough to change the strategic picture without committing to full regime change. This is messier than option 1, but far less catastrophic than option 3. The third is the scenario nobody wants to say out loud. A full ground campaign aimed at toppling the government and replacing it with something more amenable to regional stability, as Washington defines it. This would be the most consequential American military decision in decades, possibly longer. Iran is not Iraq, circa 2003. It's a country of 85 million people with varied terrain, a Revolutionary Guard that has spent its entire existence preparing for an American invasion, and enough national identity that even citizens deeply opposed to their own government are unlikely to welcome foreign troops warmly. History gives us very little reason to believe this ends cleanly, or quickly. Here's what stays with me. 2,500 Marines are sitting in the Persian Gulf right now, waiting. They're professionals doing their jobs, following lawful orders, trusting that the people above them have thought this through carefully. That trust deserves to be honored by the people making these decisions. And yet, the public conversation, the national debate that should accompany any decision to put American service members in harm's way at this scale, is barely happening. There are no primetime hearings, no sustained front-page pressure, just a ship in a body of water and officials using the word routine. That silence is worth paying attention to, regardless of how you feel about the policy itself. Military forces can achieve tactical objectives. What it has consistently failed to do, across decades of American experience in the Middle East and Central Asia, is resolve the underlying political conditions that create conflict in the first place. The question worth asking isn't whether the U.S. can put troops ashore in Iran. The question is, what happens on day 90, day 900? What does success actually look like? And who decides when we've reached it? Those Marines on the USS Tripoli didn't choose this moment. They'll go where they're sent and do their jobs with remarkable professionalism. The least the rest of us can do is pay close enough attention to ask whether the people sending them there have genuinely answered those questions, or are hoping the answers become clearer once things are already in motion. History suggests we should probably find out before, not after.